rice field is empty, and also throughout town. That is included as far as our defensible space requirements and the individual hazardous fuel abatement type of conditions. I was thinking more along the lines of the hay bale.
This literally melted steel and, like I said, burned for over 30 days. And so when you have something like that, it's a very serious situation. And so something like that, it'd be put in the plan so that we can be aware of it going forward. It's happened already twice. It doesn't mean it's gonna happen again, because we don't know, right? We don't know where it's gonna happen, when it's gonna hit. But I think it's important that we address that.
It is, and those types of things are covered here as far as your weed abatement type of things.
It's not a weed abatement. It's the straw, the bales are probably the size, if not bigger, than that safe there.
Okay.
I think the way this could help us is breaking up that continuity of fuels, and so by clearing out our ditch banks, which is in this plan, it's going to stop that, at least keep it on that property. As for stopping the hay bale fire itself, I mean, like you said, apart for 30 days, that is with some effort from us. But I think, going back to this plan and the priorities, I think by cleaning out those drainage canals, keeping those retention ponds free, and any continuity of fuel between those two properties does fall within this plan.
Absolutely.
And then we can discuss, further about the hay bales themselves down the road, like I said.
I'm just to throw something in here, the hay bale thing, that was, hay that's put up too damp.
Yeah, we have it all over the region, right?
Yeah, and they were hurrying getting that stuff out of fields and all that, so, I mean, that's a bad situation that came to fruition.
Yes.
Not the normal case. So, I mean, that's a process that probably, pretty much out of your hands, has to do with the people putting the hay up and knowing what they're doing rather than just getting stuff out of the field as fast as they could. So, yeah, I'm not sure what you possibly could do in that situation, but, yeah, I think that's just good practice, and that was kept to that property.
It was kept to the piles and the property.
So, yeah, and, I'm not sure what else could have been done to mitigate that.
Well, could I jump in? So, one in the report, it talks about North Wind. And had there been a wind that day, that fire would have jumped. And to Anita's point, it should not, it's in the county, but it should not be that close to the city. And so, I honestly, Randy left, I was gonna ask him, he's on the national, co-chairs the National Wildfire for utilities. I noticed there was no utilities or stakeholders in it, whether they were PG&E or otherwise. And, there have been situations in Biggs where a few years ago, maybe 10 now, but Bottle Rocket, north into town, north wind, northeast wind, and had it not been stopped, it would have cut through town. And I think that's really what Anita's saying is that, there are things that are on the borderline of the community that are a threat to the community that aren't listed per se in this. And she wants it addressed, quite frankly, I do as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think we have
I
this
mean, did I
conversation.
articulate?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, and there's a number of items, to there. So as part of the Buchanan Collaborative, there's about 30 or more agencies, whether it's the Forest Service, Butte County Fire, and so on, the Fire Safety Council, Resource Conservation District, Sierra Pacific Industries, and so on. One of those entities is that's a member of the Butte County Collaborative Group is Pacific Gas and Electric. They also have contributed to some of the projects in the project list. PG&E was absolutely involved in the development of this project, and as far as from the utility standpoint, and we also did reach out to Chief Fowler and Chief Connerty to get input as far as Biggs and Gridley to try and incorporate some of the specifics to these areas that we haven't covered in the detail before that we have right now. as far as the storage of the agricultural products and things like that, the agricultural products, I understand that the spread off of the agricultural land is something that we covered by this plan, but as far as the agricultural products themselves, that's something that I think is outside the purview of this document. I agree that it's something that there should be discussions about, but I don't know that it's something that, falls into the community wildfire protection plan, specifically agricultural products. But it's something that definitely there should be discussions and. Sure. And I know Chief Conway will carry forward, and I will too.
Did you say there was a document that addressed items for relief bigs?
Yes,
It's
so,
in there.
yeah,
Pull that up.
It's toward the end, I thought.
It's, page 77 and 78 for bids.
Thanks. But if I could ask one other question, why 20 years? Why did it take 20 years to do this?
so this has been quite the evolution. From 2000, so CAL FIRE every CAL FIRE unit has its own unit fire plan. And it's been many decades that each CAL FIRE unit has had its own fire plan that supports the statewide state fire plan. And in 2002, as the Community Wildfire Protection Plan rubric, if you will, was developed, locally we realized that these rubrics had a lot of overlap as far as what's required for a fire plan and what's required for a community wildfire protection plan. So let's say around 2010 or so, the idea was brought forward to combine those documents. And the framework that we had used for a long time was the unit fire plan. So that unit fire plan was morphed into covering the community to also serving as a community wildfire protection plan. As we came upon this 5-year rewrite, we realized that doing that is an antiquated way, and it also really favored the fire department's view of the way things should view of things. So we decided let's change the framework into a community wildfire protection plan that also meets the CAL FIRE standards for a unit fire plan. And that really created this different way of thinking of, this is a community-derived document. That's why we had so much public outreach and so many stakeholders that we brought in that hadn't had a lot of input into the unit fire plan and the CWPP in the past. So that changing of the way of thinking is why this document expanded from 150 pages to almost 500. Now we have resources for communities as far as homeowners to help protect their own property, things they can do to harden their homes, resources as far as funding sources for grant opportunities, not only for the local jurisdictions, but also for our cooperators, the Fire State Council and homeowners, a lot of post-fire recovery resources, and also a lot more data-driven, fact-derived, this is why this area is a problem, and this is why this should be one of the higher priority areas for us to focus our efforts when funding comes available. These are the areas we'd like to target. So it really expanded the scope of the document to be a lot more inclusive and well-rounded, and also be able to be more targeted towards each individual community, as opposed to the statewide level kind of looking down, if that makes sense.
And, I can see that, I think I understand what you're saying, but as far as for public-owned utilities, the wildfire thing has been an issue for us for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of feels like you guys are, from what I've been hearing the last few years, that you're not really up with, in other words, this should have been done sooner as opposed to now. That's just based on my, what I've been hearing, both state and federal, through the public-owned utilities. And that's just, my layman's opinion of it.
Yeah, so if you just clarify, so when you say this should have been done a long time ago?
In other words, this plan should have been updated a lot long, not taking 20 years to do.
Okay, so this plan has been, so since it is the CAL FIRE, the unit's fire plan, it is reviewed every year. And it goes through the state up through, to Sacramento. And every 5 years, since it's the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, it's been brought to the local jurisdictions for signatures. Unfortunately, in years past, as I said, the focus has been on the foothill communities. And now with the changing view of how we produce this document, wanting it to be truly every jurisdiction throughout the county, is why the first time it's coming to your council, in order to kind of ensure the entire county is on board, as opposed to just focusing on the foothill communities. So, if I could go back 20 years and say, hey, you know, let's bring this to every community, probably would have been a good idea. But that wasn't the focus. That's the way the document derived, the way that it originally came about from being the unit fire plan. And that's why we're trying to expand the scope right now.
Okay, I understand better, thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Cliff, for pulling this page up, page 77, with the fire history. Several vegetation fires have threatened and destroyed structures and bigs over the years. However, these fires have been contained before they became major wildland fire incidents. The question here, under WUI's situation, these fuels require careful management to mitigate potential fire hazards and protect the community. So what mitigations and management is being worked on to make sure that